Have you ever had an opportunity come up in your life and you thought, if I say yes to this, there's a chance I might lose part of myself? I've been there too. And today we're going to talk about how trusting yourself in those uncertain situations, even though it's difficult, it is the best path forward.
1, 2, whoo!
Welcome to Authenticity Lab, Season 2 of the podcast, where we explore how to thrive in uncertainty by reconnecting with our authentic selves. I'm Dr. Kelsey Miles. I'm a musician, songwriter, and also a chemistry professor. You see, I use music and science to understand my world within and the world around me. Each week, I share a new story and I break it down using the scientific method, and my hope is that every episode will help you live more boldly, lead a life of curiosity, so you can be the truest version of yourself. We use my framework, Calibrate, Experiment, Optimize in this podcast. And this month, we're rounding out our conversation around my song, Beautiful Mistake. And if you've been following along, our first episode this month was about self-forgiveness. We dropped the shame and the blame. Then we moved on to self-acceptance, really being radically honest about where you're at. Then we learned to embrace the parts we don't like about ourselves. And today we're going to talk about how do you sit with uncertainty while not losing yourself? How can you stay present in your newly calibrated form? It's so easy to take a few steps back and to go back to ways in which you've handled things that felt comfortable. But look, you've done a lot of inner work already. So it's important to learn, how do I trust myself in these uncertain situations? How do I stay present? Let me share a story about a time in which I made a very clear decision, and then life decided to give me another opportunity later on, and I questioned my initial idea and my initial resolute idea that I had. And this all came from me calibrating and learning more about myself. So it makes sense when the opportunity came again, I kind of questioned if it really was right for me. Okay, so after graduate school, after I got my PhD, I went full time into music. And I remember thinking through that period of time how I'd always planned to be a chemistry professor. That was in my brain when I started grad school at UW-Madison. And I really, really wanted that. And when I picked up the guitar, my plans changed. And so at the end of getting my PhD, I was all in on being a songwriter and musician. And that's what I wanted to do. I just wanted to play my guitar. And I remember disappointing a lot of people around me, including my family, my parents. Like they just wanted me to have a safe job. And I remember, I could tell my advisor was disappointed, rightfully so, because he didn't know what was going on. And how could I love chemistry so much and then switch my brain, my thought process around it? But I knew it was right for me. And in order to make that choice, I kind of had to make it more black and white for myself. So I decided it was bad, to be a chemistry professor, and it wasn't my path. And I was going to be a musician. And I needed to kind of make it very clear for my brain that I was 100% doing the right thing by making the other option bad. So fast forward years later, COVID happened. I started teaching online because I lost all my gigs. I really love teaching, and that kind of bubbled up in me. And so I went to visit a friend of mine. He was a visiting scientist when I was in grad school, and he now lives in Kansas City. And I visited him and his wife. We had coffee, and his wife worked at Avila University and asked me if I was interested in applying for the chemistry professor job that they had posted because they knew I was going to move to Kansas City for music. And she said, "This is your specialty. I think you would do well at it." And I told her no, like right away, like immediately. I said no, because in my head from years ago, I had decided when I made the choice about being a musician that I was not going to be a chemistry professor. Like I really convinced myself that dream is gone. It will never happen, ever, ever, ever. And so for it to come up again, I had this visceral, very quick response to her. And part of that response came from this idea that I had learned in just through experience that I wasn't really celebrated as both a musician and chemist. I really felt like I could only choose one. And so when she asked, I was like, oh, of course not, because I'm moving here for music, right? That would be totally abandoning myself if I said yes to that opportunity. Fast forward a few more weeks, and she emailed me again and asked if I would just be interested in just talking to her colleagues. I can submit a resume so they have a little bit of info about me. And a little bit of me was like, why not? You've got nothing to lose. You're pretty resolute in this, but why not? So I did. And I jumped on a call with her colleagues. And I remember vividly going from this is a conversation with her and her colleagues. And then it quickly shifted into, holy crap, this is an interview. And so if you've ever applied for a job when you already have a job, it's way less stressful. So I don't know if that's ever happened to you, but it kind of made me laugh because if I knew it was an interview, I'd have been way more stressed. And I actually enjoyed getting to know them and learning how much they enjoy teaching, which is something that I just value as a character trait in someone who wants to share their knowledge. And so they ended up inviting me to an on-site interview. And as I I said yes to that too, even though my head was saying, "You said no chemistry professor job. You shut the door on that. Why are you opening it? You're going to end up saying yes to this thing, climbing the ladder of a building that you've already decided is not yours to climb." Really, these were the things going through my head. But I had a small part of me that said, I know this is uncertain. Even though I have past things telling me I'm very clear about this, I should say no to this opportunity. A little bit of me was like, yeah, but. So I went ahead and I explored that. And I was offered the position. And I remember sitting with the offer and thinking to myself, if I say yes to this, there's a good chance that I'm going to need to completely put down my music. And I'm so afraid of saying yes to an opportunity and then losing myself. Now, not quite again. It wouldn't have been the same as when I was in grad school, but I remember how much reclaiming my voice through music felt that I was so afraid I'd lose that if I said yes. And when I sat with that, I realized that, and we'll get into this as we calibrate, but I had changed. Through the years, I had really developed a foundation where I trusted that music was a part of me. I am a creative person. I don't question that anymore. And so, in a way, I had to trust that even though I was fearful and I didn't know what to do, I didn't know if to say yes or no, I could trust that I had more life experiences and that if I just sit with feeling uncertain about the choice, that maybe a path forward will show up. And so I decided through that to say yes with this following caveat. Now, I wasn't throwing away my old idea about I really wanted to be a musician. It didn't have to be so black and white this time. I had done enough work to where I expanded my capacity for uncertainty. So I said, I'm going to say yes to this. And if I feel like during this situation of this new job, if I'm losing myself, if I'm not playing, not creating the way that I want to, if it doesn't feel right anymore, I trust myself to listen. And that alone, telling myself I trust myself to listen to that, made me saying yes feel it was more at ease. The situation was still uncertain. I didn't change whether or not I was uncertain about it. I said yes, and also recognizing that it still might not be for me. I'll do my best. And also, I trust that if I go down that path again, If it's not feeling right, I will say something. And here's the beautiful thing. Because I said yes with the caveat of I am going to trust myself if it starts to feel off, I noticed when it started feeling off. I noticed that the idea of tenure and the archaic way to think about being a scientist is not one I will be subscribing to. And I plan to do more interdisciplinary work. So, by catching it early, I was actually able to sign up to teach a new class starting this fall. It's called Life Experiments, where I teach the scientific method in an honors course and how to apply it to life. Pretty cool, which is exciting. I also started my podcast, and I also still kept time carved out for recording my next album. And so, even though I was feeling uncertain about this situation, by trusting that I would notice when it felt off, that is what kept me from losing myself. This brings me to share some lyrics from my song Beautiful Mistake. I imagined a beautiful masterpiece, an infallible vision just waiting to be released. You see, that beautiful masterpiece that I imagined has often been this idea of a perfect plan. And when we get really black and white about our plans and it's got to be 100% yes. And the real beautiful masterpiece wasn't that I had a perfect plan, even though that's what we often think of, this infallible vision. And the idea is that when we have these perfect plans, when they actually start to play out, they are never like we plan them to be. The real masterpiece was how willing I was to walk through the mess of the unknown and trust myself.
Imagine a beautiful masterpiece, an infallible vision, just waiting to be released.
I also sing in this song, I entered unknowing the journey that I would endure. And that's so true with everything in life. We really don't know what the journey's going to be. And so instead of being okay with that messy, uncertain time frame, what we do is we try to get rid of uncertainty. The moment we feel like we don't know what to do, we try to get rid of it. We don't actually sit in the uncertainty and go, why am I feeling uncertain? What is it about my past or fear of future that's coming up for me right now? There's a reason that you feel like pausing. There's a reason you feel like shutting down. There's a reason you feel like saying no immediately or yes immediately. Now, I'm not saying you have to analyze this all the time. The difference is that you're going to feel this resistance when you know a decision is a yes for you and it feels good and inspired. You don't have to go through a pro and con list. You just say yes. However, if you find yourself going, uh-oh, I thought we were done with this. Now I'm not so sure. That's your moment that says, let's pause. Let's pause. So let's pause. What's something that feels uncertain in your life? Or if you'd like, we can reflect on something that you have made a decision on that felt uncertain. And ask yourself, do you feel like it's fear from the past? Kind of like my story. I had already decided I'd closed the door on being a chemistry professor. Why would I say yes to it now? And potentially lose myself and not be that musician I thought I was trying to be. Is it also fear? You can ask yourself, is it fear for future? Like, are you uncertain about how it's going to turn out? Now ask yourself, how do you want to feel within this choice? For me, when I started to analyze the yes or no to that offer, my yes felt uncertain. However, it felt doable if I listened to myself, through the yes. Does that make sense? And if I said no, there was part of me that was like, if I just say no, it really feels heavy and I'm a little worried I'll regret it because I know that my hesitation is coming from past fear. So these will kind of help you see where you're sitting with the choice. And I'll add this, if you are finding it really hard to trust yourself, that you'll be able to check in with after you make this decision, especially if you say yes to it. You might find it useful to reflect with a friend and ask them, I'm worried I'm going to say yes to this and I don't know if I can trust myself. And ask them to help you come up with situations in which you've shown that you can pivot and that you do listen to yourself and that you do speak up when things are not feeling right. And that can kind of help you get some confidence in that you can trust yourself in those situations. And now I'd like for you to promise yourself, not just trust, but promise yourself that you will listen to yourself when if it feels off, if it stops feeling in alignment. Because the truth is you don't know what the outcome will be until you try it. You just won't. And the key is that you've done the work. If you've been listening to season 2, you've done the work. So we're now at a new level of our foundation. So it's going to feel uncertain. And the idea is that you must trust yourself. If you promise yourself that you're going to do your best, that's all you can do is your best, to listen if it starts to feel off, that will give you some confidence to really and be open to see what the reality of it is as you start to move through this uncertain situation. This is where we don't numb. We don't shut down. We stay very curious. And if you stay curious, you won't miss it. You won't make a wrong decision and stay too long. You won't start a new job and stay way longer than you should, or a new relationship and stay way longer than you should. Promising yourself that you're going to listen, you're going to do your best to listen, is a gift that you can give yourself and really helps you feel confident that I don't know if this is going to work out, and I trust myself to listen to myself if it stops working out. When I was given pushback about my music, and I'll share this, at the end of my first year, boy, did this decision feel off. At the end of my first year, I was given very clear directive advice to pull way back on music, that all the students here should think that I'm only here for chemistry. And I'll be honest, that feedback I received made me want to just run. And after I talked to more colleagues, I realized that was just one opinion that someone had. And because I have promised, like you did in this podcast episode, I promised myself when I said yes to this decision, that I would listen to when it feels off. And so I did. And of course, I had felt like terrible that I got that review and I'm like, oh no, this is not for me. Of course, I went through the spiral. But I came back to and thought, you know what? Just because one person doesn't see how chemistry and music are so freaking similar, maybe that's why I'm here. And then later, let's see, it must have been maybe 6 months after that, I started this podcast. And then now this coming semester, guess who's teaching a course called Life Experiments? Me. And guess who's using music in it? Me. And so the beautiful part about this is that I caught it early and I doubled down on not abandoning myself. So will I get tenure? Who knows? That could be for another podcast episode. I might not. They might be very mad that I have brought in music to the chemistry world. But I'll tell you what, I'm not abandoning myself. That is the one thing that I promised myself. And I hope that after today's episode, you can walk away feeling strong and that if you really trust yourself, you'll do your best to listen and you'll pivot. You won't abandon yourself again. We've done too much calibration. Hey, if you enjoyed this podcast episode, I'd love if you could share it with friends or family who you think might also get some benefit out of this. Oh, and I have a gift for you. This Friday, we're doing a free group call. You can email me at kelsey@kelseymiles.com to get access to the Zoom. We are doing a calibration workshop. It's free. You'll feel really good at the end of it. I'm really excited to start doing some more group calls like that. And I just want to congratulate you right now. You just finished the first month of season 2. We self-forgave. We had self-acceptance for ourselves. We embraced the parts that we don't love about ourselves. And in today's episode, we wrap that up by really trusting the calibration that we've done, how to sit in that uncertainty and not lose yourself. Next month, we're diving into my second song on my album called Shadow. And this is where we're going to do some deep inner work. We're still in our calibration phase of the framework, really building that solid, unshakable foundation. Thank you so much for joining me on this week's episode of Authenticity Lab. I'll be back next week with a new life story to inspire you to live boldly, lead a life of curiosity so you can keep being your most amazing, authentic self.
Yeah, that house will always call you home.